Texas high school football is back. These are the picks. Welcome into the picks, your guide to the Texas high school football weekend. My name is Greg Tepper of Dave Campbell's Texas Football and TexasFootball.com. Thank you so much for tuning into the longest running prediction show in Texas high school football, I suppose. Year 8 of the picks. Can you believe it? But here we are on the precipice of the 2022 Texas high school football season. We have slogged through the long off season. Realignment has come and gone. Coaching changes all over the place. But here we are, toe about to meet leather in more than 700 games all across the Lone Star State. It is truly the most wonderful time of the year. We, of course, have you covered every step of the way at TexasFootball.com. There are massive games everywhere you look in Week 1 of the 2022 Texas high school football season. We start in Iowa Colony. 7 o'clock Friday night at Freedom Field in Iowa Colony. It is an Alvin ISD showdown live on Bally Sports Southwest as part of Texas Football Days as the Manville Mavericks take on the Alvin Shadow Creek Sharks. What are the keys to this matchup? Key number 1, Manville's youth movement. This is going to be a very young Manville team. They got absolutely obliterated by graduation, returning just 3 starters from last year's squad. Now, part of it is that they were pretty senior heavy last year. Another part of it is the addition of Iowa Colony High School. They're in the Alvin ISD, which is kind of drawing some kids away from Manville High. So kind of changing demographics, changing sands there at Manville High School for Coach Kevin Hall. Now, they really like the talent that they've got there, like quarterback Caden Smith, but a lot of it is largely unproven. So, in Week 1, on a big stage, can the youngsters from Manville step up? Key number 2, the Butler did it. Let's talk a little bit about the quarterback situation for Shadow Creek with quarterback Duke Butler. The coach's kid has been spectacular for them, the district offensive MVP a year ago, threw for 1,900 yards and 29 touchdowns in a sensational junior season. And now the big question is, what's next? Can he take that next step and go from being a great quarterback to an elite one? Because if they find an elite quarterback, suddenly everything opens up for the Shadow Creek team. It all feels like it's right in front of them. Now, big test in the early going up against a talented Manville secondary led by blue chip cornerback Jalen O'Neal. So, can Duke Butler take the next step under center? And key number 3, a budding rivalry. Believe it or not, this is the first ever meeting between Shadow Creek and Manville. They're in Alvin ISD. They're going to play at beautiful Freedom Field. It's going to be live statewide on Bally Sports Southwest as part of Texas Football Days. And you kind of get the feeling that these two teams want to get their hands on each other. You kind of get the feeling that these two teams want to fight a little bit. They want to have this rivalry there in Alvin ISD, and I think there's a little bit of tension between these two programs. Of course, Shadow Creek is the newer program, but it's the team that has the state championship. Manville is the more experienced program, although they're hardly been around for all that long, but they're a team that's had success of their own and arguably has a longer track record than Shadow Creek does. So this is really a fight for who is the dominant force in Alvin ISD, and we could be seeing the beginning of a really fun rivalry down there in Alvin ISD. So, on a big stage with television cameras on them, which team can take hold of this rivalry? Who am I picking? I'm going with Shadow Creek. The Sharks get the nod here simply because I have far fewer questions about them than I do about Manville. This is a Shadow Creek team that looks like their offensive line is going to be pretty darn good. Quarterback is set. The receivers look really good. The defense looks like it could take a very nice step in 2022. This is a Shadow Creek team that feels ready right now. Manville may take some time to get there. I still think they're going to be a really good ball club, but because they're going to be so young and working in so many new pieces, especially in Week 1, I think it's probably too early to expect them to be playing up to their paper. But I think the rivalry aspect is going to even out a lot of these differences. I think that it's going to be a really fun atmosphere there at Freedom Field. It's going to be a fun telecast on Bally Sports Southwest, but I do think Shadow Creek gets the win. Let's go to East Texas, 7:30 p.m. Friday night at Bulldog Stadium in Tyler. It is a top 5 showdown in Class 4A as the Tyler Chapel Hill Bulldogs welcome in the Gilmer Buckeyes. What are the keys to this matchup? Key number 1, big shoes to fill. If you look up and down this roster for Gilmer, there's a lot to like. They've got a lot of big-time playmakers who are back from their run to a state championship game last year. Rohan Fluellen, their number 1 receiver, is back out wide. He's going to be a dynamo. Ashton Haynes, a two-way star for this Gilmer team. He is back. There's a lot to like about Alan Metzel's squad. There's just one teeny tiny little thing missing, and that's a quarterback, because they have graduated one of the most prolific quarterbacks in program history in Brandon Tennyson, and that's saying something, because Gilmer's had some dudes at QB1. That's a real question mark entering the season for Gilmer, is how they are going to fill the shoes left by Brandon Tennyson, who's now off to the next level. And especially in week 1, that may still be an unanswered question. That doesn't mean it's not going to be answered down the road, but we just don't know what that answer is right now. So, as the season kicks off, is the Gilmer quarterback situation settled, or are we still figuring things out? Key number 2, Chapel Hill's defense. There's going to be a lot written about this Chapel Hill offense because they are loaded. I mean, absolutely loaded. 10 starters are back from last year's squad, whether you're talking about superstar quarterback Demetrius Brisbane or running back Ricky Stewart, Deuce McGregor. They have playmakers everywhere on the offensive side. This offense for Coach Jeff Reardon is going to hum. But if this Chapel Hill team is going to be a state championship contender, like we think they could be, they've got to take a next step defensively. They were okay defensively last year, kind of middle of the pack in 4A Division I, but if they're going to win a state championship, they've got to be even better. I've got a big-time playmaker in Kevion Huddleston, who up front, who I think could be a game changer. But overall, state championship hopes for Chapel Hill lie on the defensive side. We know the offense is going to do their thing. What does the defense do? So, in week 1, how much progress has Chapel Hill made defensively? And key number 3, it's week 1. It's week 1. I mean, it kind of says it right there. This is the opening week of the Texas high school football season, and nobody expects any team, really, across the state of Texas to be a perfectly fine-tuned machine, right? There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be penalties. There's going to be missed blocks. There's going to be missed tackles. There's going to be drop passes. There's going to be those turnovers, those types of mistakes that you tend to see in week 1. But at the same time, this is a really interesting test for both of these teams, which both have legit state championship aspirations. Chapel Hill in 4A Division I and Gilmer in 4A Division II. I think playing a clean game is ultimately what's going to determine this game. These two teams look really evenly matched. They look like they've got a lot of playmakers on both sides of the ball. Who makes fewer mistakes? So it's week 1. There's going to be errors out there. Which teams can mitigate those errors and grab a win? Who am I picking? I'm going with Chapel Hill. Being at home helps for the Bulldogs here, but I also think that their offense just has fewer questions right now because they bring back so much from what was one of the most unstoppable offenses in Texas high school football last year. And remember, a lot of these guys are like now sophomores and juniors, so get used to Chapel Hill for the next couple of years. This is a really dangerous offense that, even though I think Gilmer's defense is going to be pretty darn good, I think Chapel Hill's going to have an opportunity to score some points. Look, all eyes are going to be under center for Gilmer. They've got to find a quarterback. If they find a quarterback, they're a bona fide state championship contender. That's the real question here. But I think it's probably asking too much to expect them to have that quarterback situation settled for good in week 1. I think this game's going to be fun, and it might get up and down as part of a high-scoring shootout, but I do think Chapel Hill moves to 1-0. It's a big slate on Saturday, 6 o'clock Saturday evening at Kincaid Stadium in Dallas. It is a 6A versus 5A showdown as the Duncanville Panthers take on the South Oak Cliff Golden Bears. South Oak Cliff back to defend their 5A Division II state championship, and they might be even better this season. Okay, this team is going to be absolutely fantastic. Manny Muhammad and Javon Thomas lead what, no exaggeration, might be the best secondary in the nation at the high school level. It is going to be ridiculous. The offensive line is going to be great. They've got big-time receivers out wide like Randy Reese, but there's a big question at quarterback. Can they find somebody to replace Kevin Henry Jennings? On the other side, for Duncanville, coming off of a heartbreaking 6A Division I state championship loss, they're going to be good at all the Duncanville things. Their front seven is going to be menacing, led by defensive end Colin Simmons, but they too have some questions at quarterback. Now remember, last year, South Oak Cliff hung tough with Duncanville before Duncanville eventually won that game, but that should have signaled to us how good South Oak Cliff really was. I think there's a real chance South Oak Cliff wins this game. I think that their defense has been fantastic, and if they answer the quarterback spot question, they're going to be right in it. But I think you got to go with Duncanville from a depth perspective. I think they get the win, but keep an eye on this one. I think it's going to be really fun. Let's stay on Saturday. 7 o'clock Saturday evening at Allen's Eagle Stadium as part of the Tom Landry Classic. It is Lovejoy taking on College Station in a certified 5A banger. This game is going to be a lot of fun, and if you want star power, this is the game for you. College Station's got Marquis Collins, one of the most jaw-dropping talents in Texas high school football, who led College Station all the way to the state championship last season, and he is a dynamo and well worth the price of admission all by himself. Lovejoy might have one of the very best receiver corps in the state. I mean, they are going to be 3-4 deep in their receiver corps led by Jackson Lavender. They look like they may be the chief challenger to South Oak Cliff in 5A Division II. As far as this week one matchup is concerned, I think it's going to be full of explosive plays back and forth. I think there's going to be big plays all over the place. But I have fewer questions about Lovejoy. They feel like a more well-formed and fully formed team right now as opposed to College Station where we have questions, right? New coach Stoney Pryor taking over. They need to find a quarterback to replace Jet Huff. They need to replace, I believe, 3 starters on the offensive line. There are questions about this College Station team that we simply don't have about Lovejoy right now. That's why the Leopards get the early nod. And 7:30 p.m. Friday night at Cougar Stadium in China Spring. How about a matchup of defending state champs to kick off the season? As the China Spring Cougars welcome in the Lorena Leopards in a must-see Central Texas showdown. And a great matchup of coaches here. You've got Ray Biles, the coach for Lorena, who is entering his 31st season there with the Leopards, coming off his first state championship, looking for win number 201, going up against Tyler Beatty, looking for win number 1. Coaching in his first game, taking over for Brian Bell after being promoted from an assistant's position. The coaching matchup here is really interesting. It's such an interesting dynamic. As far as on the field is concerned, China Spring has got to find a replacement for Mr. Texas Football Player of the Year, Major Bowden, and they've got one in Wimberley transfer Cash McCollum, who came in from the Texans and is going to be a little bit different. He's more of a drop-back passer than Major Bowden was, who was much more kind of quarterback power right up ahead, but this is going to be an offense that I think is going to hum. Meanwhile, Lorena is probably going to have the single individual best player on the field in Baylor commit Jaden Porter. He is a monster out wide, but we also have some questions on the offensive line for Lorena, and that is where I think China Spring is going to have an edge, their front seven against the Lorena offensive line. I think this game's going to be fun, and remember, China Spring beat Lorena last year. Lorena still had a pretty darn good year, running to a 3A Division I state championship, so I wouldn't bury them quite yet if they were to get the win. But I do think that the Cougars start the year 1-0. But those are far from the only big games in week 1 of the Texas high school football season. Let's get to the lightning round. Way out west, I like Canutillo over El Paso Pebble Hills. Out east, I like Carthage to start the year 1-0 with a win over Kilgore. And down in the Brazos Valley, give me A&M Consolidated over Huntsville. Corpus Christi Flower Bluff takes down Bernie. I like Dangerfield to beat Gladewater in a close one. And give me Abernathy to take down Childress. Eagle Pass takes down rival Eagle Pass win. Give me Holiday to beat Iowa Park. And in an interesting public versus private school game, give me Aledo just barely over Parish Episcopal. The Jeff Joseph era at Port Neches Grove starts with a win over Port Arthur Memorial. The Tom Westerberg era at Salado begins with a win over Fredericksburg. And in a really interesting cross-regional matchup, I think Arlington Martin takes down Lake Travis. Huge triple header at the Alamo Dome on Saturday. I like San Antonio Reagan over Smithson Valley in the game I'm most interested in. Meanwhile, Thursday night out east, I like Timpson over Beckville. The Dave Campbell's Texas football crew will be there. I'm so fired up. And in the Austin area, I like Vandegrift to take down Dripping Springs. New coach Tony Salazar moves Austin Westlake to 1-0 with a win over Fort Bend Ridgepoint. Give me Salina to take down Paris. And I'm going with Clarendon over Panhandle. Give me Coleman over Mason. I'm going with Edinburgh Vela over Edinburgh North, and a really tough game to call in 4A. I like El Campo just barely over Cuero. Gregory Portland takes down Corpus Christi Cal Allen. I like Atascocita over Dickinson in a huge Houston area matchup. And I'm going to go with Jim Ned just barely over Hawley. Lubbock Cooper beats Dumas. I like Midland Legacy over Amarillo. And give me Munster over Bells. I think Galena Park North Shore starts their title defense with a win over the Woodlands. Give me Pleasant Grove over Brock in a massive 4A versus 3A matchup. And another game in that triple header at the Alamo Dome, I like San Antonio Brennan over Cibolo Steel. Give me Waco La Vega to outmuscle Kennedale, and in our 6-man game of the week, it's a good one. I like Jayton to beat May. And those are the picks. What am I wrong about? Which games did I leave out? Leave comments down below. Don't forget that subscribe button. Follow us on Twitter at DCTF. Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/DaveCampbells. Follow us on Instagram, instagram.com/DaveCampbells. And of course, see us at TexasFootball.com, where you can find complete coverage of the 2022 Texas high school football season at TexasFootball.com. Thanks again for watching. Happy football season. We'll see you.